afternoon, and thank you for joining our session today, Understanding Brand Suitability's Relationship with CTV Advertising. My name is David George. I'm the CEO of Pixability. We provide a data and ad technology platform that powers brand suitable and high-performing video campaigns on YouTube, as well as other CTV platforms, including Roku, Amazon Fire, and Hulu. I'm thrilled to be joined by Susan Schieckhofer, Chief Digital Investment Officer for Group M North America, Joshua Lowcock, U.S. Chief Digital and Global Brand Safety Officer for UM, and Danny Walensky, Global Head of YouTube Buying Experiences for Google. Thank you all for joining.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us. For having us.
Well, to get started, I'm sure we can all agree that brand safety and brand suitability has evolved a lot over the last few years. There's been a lot of great thought leadership at events like this. Common language has emerged. Industry groups such as GARM have introduced guidelines for the benefit of the industry. And the conversation has really moved from how do I ensure my brand's ads don't run near unsafe content to how do I make sure my brand's ads are running adjacent to content that is safe, suitable, aligns with my brand's values, and driving the best possible outcomes. I'd love to hear from all of you just to get started. What is the state of the market, and how do you view kind of the evolution over the past few years? Susan, maybe you can start.
Love to. I remember back to when I was running a large telecom piece of business, and this was back in 2010, and it was basic brand. Like it was third-party verification, and we were looking at basic brand safety, mostly like in a lot of the ad networks. And I remember there was a big red flag on Sports Illustrated, and we're like, how could Sports Illustrated have a big red flag? And it turned out that boxing, men didn't wear shirts, so it was flagged for nudity, right? So think about the early days of brand safety, suitability, measurement, verification to where we are now. And listen, we have a long way to go. But in the last really 10 years, the evolution of scoring, measuring, reporting, and putting our clients in much more suitable brand environments the progress has just been tremendous.
Fantastic. Joshua.
Yeah, I think Susan hit on some good points. I think the parts that I would like to add is we've actually shifted in the level of sophistication of products and tools that are available and the thinking. So that's a great thing. I think the other one is that we have to recognize is the third force of online activist groups and consumer understanding of the matter has risen dramatically. So you look at last year and the Facebook boycott as an example, I think that actually thrust sort of brand safety and suitability in the spotlight because it was seen as a broader societal impact of what are you funding, what is the impact of what you're funding.
Danny, from a YouTube perspective, or your own.
Yeah. No, I would echo what's been said already, but also offer that for the past, I'd say 4 or 5 years in particular, we have really integrated responsibility into the fabric of everything we do at YouTube. And so we've started to get a lot more principled around the pillars of focus we have. And of course, it's around making our technology better at removing harmful content, but it's also so much more than that. It's how do we get better at dealing with what's sort of on the borderline by raising the right authoritative content and voices and reducing what may be not necessarily violative of our policies, but potentially harmful and maybe right on the edge. And then of course, rewarding only trusted creators. And so I'm really excited to your point on the conversation shifting more to how brands can find the most suitable environments. I think that's only a result of having made such important technology improvements. Right now, we're removing about 10 million videos a quarter, the majority of which don't ever reach 10 views. And so, of course, the work will never end there. We have 20,000 people working across Google on these issues. But it does enable us to have more robust conversations around the interplay between suitability and performance and inclusion and all of those really exciting topics.
Switching gears or more about focusing to CTV, how do you all view brand safety and suitability on CTV? Is it different than the traditional digital platforms? You know, a lot of the content is professionally produced, but there's a lot of violence, sexual content, racial innuendos, etc. How does brand safety and suitability manifest itself, or how do you think about it for your clients on connected TVs? Joshua, maybe you can start.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So, I mean, there's two parts to sort of pull apart, which is on connected TVs, if you look at what I would call traditional linear TV content, even if it's available on demand, existing practices and processes you have within the business to manage TV related issues on appropriate TV rating content, etc., still come into play and still can get used. Where it gets complex is when things are activated programmatically. And so that introduces a whole new headaches, especially in a market right now. It's very opaque in terms of where your inventory is going to be activated. I think the third thing that we haven't really seen grow in CTV, I mean, YouTube's there, but I would sort of consider YouTube adjacent to this issue right now, given the efforts they've made in cleaning up brand safety, is we haven't seen a whole lot of new emerging channels come out in the CTV space and user-generated content and all the associated problems that come with that, which creates monetization headaches and what are you funding? So if you get the democratization of CTV and new channels, that creates new problems because these are all things that no one's been exposed to before, when no one's seeing the content and existing rules and controls won't be, you know, available or can be applied.
Danny, you get to play in both, right? You have YouTube on TV, which is the digital social platform, and then you have YouTube TV. How do you think about brand safety and suitability in both?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing, at least from our vantage point, is we have this incredible technology and we have these suitability controls that we can enable for our customers, and they work fairly seamlessly. And Joshua mentioned something about like the opacity of knowing exactly where your ads are running, and we are really proud to offer a lot of transparency in that area, as we would if you were watching or if you were running your ads on mobile or desktop. And so, you know, from our vantage point, I do think we're at this interesting nexus of, we have the GARM standards, we also have standards that have long existed, and at a country by country level, the MPAA in the US. So it's really thinking about, for us, like how do we best standardize? How do we ensure that more platforms are leveraging the GARM standard across devices, so that regardless of whether you're watching it on your laptop or you're watching it on TV, like you're able to express the same preferences and we have the same common understanding of what's not safe for ads. And then I do think over time, we're going to start to have that conversation of like, where do GARM and kind of linear regulatory standards wind up merging?
Yeah, I think that we have to get to consistency across all video forms, and especially like we're going to have TikTok, right, on TV too. And, you know, we have to have transparency. You know, that's been a little bit of a challenge with CTV in general for some of the partners, because we don't get show level detail, for example. Like, we have to have measurement that ultimately gets us to show level detail for a few reasons. We want to make sure that it is a brand suitable environment. And the answer can't be, well, it's suitable because we told you it is, like, but we're not going to tell you what shows you ran in, right? Or channels, etc. So that's really important, just to get to a single standard for measurement, reporting, transparency. But it's got to go across the whole ecosystem. And yes, CTV is generally the produced content. You know, many brands are much more comfortable with it because they know the types of shows that they're running in versus some of the user-generated content.
Yeah, for sure. Sticking on that theme a little bit, Danny. So YouTube, all in on connected TV, right? Between YouTube on TV screens, YouTube TV, it's, you know, garners 40% of ad-supported viewing hours in the ecosystem. We've seen at Pixability, we've seen a dramatic increase in demand from our clients for it the industry as a whole, I'd say, isn't totally looking at YouTube as CTV. Why is that? And
Yeah,
you see
maybe
that
not
change?
yet. Yeah, not yet, but we're getting there. I mean, some of it is related to just even in the past year alone, there's been this massive paradigm shift in watching YouTube on TV screens. So 120 million people in the US are streaming YouTube or YouTube TV monthly. And so like now more than ever, I think people are actually starting to see that what was a trend a couple of years ago is now like a real shift in where watch time is happening, that is going to necessitate a change in where marketers are allocating dollars if they want to reach their TRP goals. So, you know, 60% of the reach that marketers are getting on YouTube when it's streaming on connected TV cannot be achieved anywhere else on any other streaming services. And when they are watching or streaming YouTube, they are watching for a significantly longer time than any other linear or ad-supported platform. So if I think about kind of the opportunity, it's really we want to help marketers drive performance, and we want to deliver viewer and advertiser experiences that align with the unique behavior we're seeing with users who are coming and watching YouTube specifically. So, you know, 25% of logged in CTV viewers are almost exclusively watching YouTube on CTV, meaning that if we don't have the right like attribution and measurement there, we're not going to adequately capture the role or the impact CTV is having on a marketer's overall performance mix. And so all of the areas of investment that we're making are really built off of the trends that we're seeing specifically for CTV as like a medium, but also the unique experience that we see our viewers having when they come to watch YouTube or YouTube TV on TV.
Susan, Joshua, you oversee a lot of budgets for your clients. How are they viewing YouTube on TV and YouTube TV?
Yeah, I mean,
as a CTV buy?
Yeah, they've been really leaning in, and listen, like YouTube's been a very good partner to us. You know, we were the early adopters of the open slate work, tracking back. You know, that was a while ago, and now certainly companies like Pixability and others working very closely with YouTube in terms of, you know, categorization, brand suitability. But for CTV specifically, our clients are absolutely leaning in more and more. I think it was a little bit of because it was a lot of short form video versus the long form. So it was that really is that really a CTV? You know, that's a place we should be leaning into. But, you know, many of the clients have seen the value in terms of making sure that we have, you know, whether it's standalone CTV campaigns or making sure that we're including as much of the distribution on CTV as possible.
I mean, I want to come out with a controversial comment because I'm always good for one of those, which is we're not talking about the big fundamental issue, which is the rise of CTV environments has also been coupled with a rise in ad-free viewing environments. So CTV is one of those few new digital channels that's emerged that's primarily focused on being an ad-free environment. And so YouTube has a natural advantage there because it continues to be ad-supported. It will continue to take a lion's share of that content consumption. Not to sort of dismiss what Danny's saying, part of it's really a YouTube marketing and positioning statement, which is, for all intents and purposes, I don't care where people consume YouTube. They can watch it on their TV, tablet, computer, mobile device, whatever. I'm going to buy that audience and reach them because that's where the audience is. The real challenge is we've got to find other CTV environments that deliver scale and are ad supported. In the absence of ad-supported content, it becomes very difficult to really build a meaningful CTV proposition for clients.
Are your clients, this is maybe for Joshua and Susan, do they view YouTube on TV screens different than YouTube TV?
So my clients don't.
They don't.
No.
So I would say you know, really just to follow on what Josh was saying, like we want to buy the natural distribution, right? And yes, there's sometimes we have CTV only campaigns, but we do want to buy the natural distribution. In terms of like YouTube TV, I would say that that's viewed a little bit differently. because we're, mostly, like our YouTube buys are like such a core part. And like, that's the big distribution, whether it's mobile, whether it's CTV, whether it's even desktop, right? Like, that's our sort of, one of our core partners, like regardless of the distribution. But it's like YouTube TV can be included as part of it, but it's just not something that, it's automatically, questioned when we're doing brand campaigns. Like, make sure you're including YouTube TV separate than YouTube on CTV.
Anything else to add before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, we were all around when the mobile paradigm shift happened as well, and it starts with how do we just make sure that the share of impressions I'm running on mobile is commensurate with the share of watch time that's actually happening on mobile, and then over time, we actually and other platforms like us start to think about like what is the unique experience when a viewer is watching video on a mobile device, and what is the opportunity then for an advertiser to offer them a better ad experience or opportunity to connect with their brand. And I think we're particularly excited is just around, yes, like we do have a lion's share of the market. However, we also have this incredible suite of formats and measurement solutions that can all really be customized for that particular screen. And we're doing a lot, for example, on the direct response side, where we can make it easier for somebody to watch something on TV, click to engage in the actual website on their phone. So agree that yes, we're very focused on capturing our share, and we'd love to see others out there as well, because competition is going to push us to be even better. But we are going further to make sure that we're not just having ads land in the environments commensurate with watch time. It's really about how do we distribute the impressions, distribute the media dollars effectively, and in each environment, make sure that the ad experience is really optimized for how a viewer is going to engage in that way.
I know you're all individually or your organizations are involved with the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or GARM. At Pixability, we are thankful for and very supportive of the work that GARM has done in the industry. Right, they've put together a framework that has at least given some guidelines for brands to think about safety, and also bands of areas to think about as it relates to safety and suitability. How do you think that industries like this or organizations like this will continue to evolve, and how do we make sure that everybody in this industry is participating in GARM and or other associations that are trying to drive standards? Danny, maybe you can start, since you're the GARM.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with GARM. I mean, I'm obviously thrilled to see the progress that has been made since we aligned on the GARM charter, and YouTube is a founding member. I think particularly in the area of standardization and consistency, which Susan alluded to previously. I mean, that's for us super important, one, so we can advocate for what advertisers need and expect internally, but also so that marketers know that they can go to any given platform and have the same sense of security and what's never going to monetize, and then the controls they have on top of that and what they can expect when they use them. So I'm still really excited about the work we can do, particularly around, I wouldn't call it turning the page on safety, but working with GARM to amplify the progress that platforms have made, such that we can have really important conversations around unlocking scale for advertisers by reducing the use of exclusions that are no longer necessary, and really understanding the before and after impact of that. And then I think a challenge will continue to be that, every platform is really unique, whether it's you have a single set of policies that govern what can live or not live on your platform, to a platform like us where we have a bar for community guidelines, a bar for monetization, and then even down to how different platforms sell their content, and therefore potentially the brand safety and suitability practices look different there. I think of a Twitch who tends to really package endemic creators and sell them more directly versus in like a more of an open auction environment. So I think there's a lot of work to do still around standards, and it's going to become increasingly important that we also recognize where there have to be natural differences in enforcement and just overall approach. And it's on GARM and its members to make sure that all of that nuance is really well articulated and communicated to the industry.
Joshua?
I mean, I think there's a phrase that Danny used, which was turning the page. I think the exciting thing is we're actually all on the same page. And I think that's the big monumental step forward that GARM's achieved. I think the big thing coming, for GARM will be as regulators start to get into this sector. There's, have increasing outreach from governments around the world who are concerned about what content's being monetized and looking at putting in regulatory frameworks. So GARM actually ensuring that the industry is adequately represented there, I think is going to be particularly important.
Susan, how does GARM manifest with your activation teams? Like, do they think about GARM, or is that left up to John and Joe and Julie and the brand safety team? Or are your teams that are activating media actually thinking about the framework?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you know, John Montgomery, Joe Barone, Julie Kendall have done, tremendous work in terms of partnership with GARM and participation. And listen, we're believers, right? Like, it's very important for our clients to think about what is the right environment for them. And GARM, with their categorization of places we don't want to be, clients have to think about it. Profanity, right? What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? I know that there's thoughts of even, maybe one or two more categorizations of the type of content we don't want. And again, this is a custom view for each client. Some clients might be, very leaned into, I want to understand, for the 11 GARM categories that we generally consider to be brand unsuitable. Most clients are aligned with that, don't want to monetize that content. But there are a couple of clients that, they may pick 9 out of the 11. They're less concerned about a couple. I think GARM's done also a really good job in making sure that it's not hurting news organizations like violence, right? Like, if you cut out any reference to violence, you could be hurting basic news reporting, right? So it's a very thoughtful organization. I know John and Joe internally have done a tremendous job in educating the teams how to look at the categorization, how to make sure that the partners that we're using are part of GARM or part of supporting. And, I just think more of our big digital partners need to be part of it. I would like to see much more of an extension.
Agreed. Yeah, and as a quick plug, not to plug Pixability, but really from an educational perspective, we actually just published a study with GARM looking at the impact of brand safety and suitability on performance. The study is specific to YouTube, but I think anybody that is involved in brand safety and suitability and interested in what the work that GARM's doing will get a lot of value from that, and that's available from our homepage. So sorry for the shameless plug. It is intended as an educational moment.
Reading it.
So, as we think about moving forward, right, CTV still feels in many ways like the Wild West. It's early days, standards are evolving, the supply chain is, still complex. There's challenges around scale, fraud. What do you think is the most important things we can think about and focus on as an industry to address brand safety and suitability in particular on CTV? Anyone want to take that?
I want to take the fraud angle.
All right.
I think that, and there is a connection to brand safety and suitability, which is with CTV fraud, which is predominantly impersonation of CTV traffic. it's going to create issues around brand safety because those ads are running somewhere on content that's inappropriate, and that's going to have a side effect which will make CTV seem unsafe as an unsafe environment. So we need to address that, and that will require more transparency in the supply chain and a concerted effort by the industry to actually clean up the fraudulent behavior so we can focus on what the true safety issues are, which is content adjacency and misalignment.
Danny, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's one of the areas we first invested in a few years ago was transparency. So when we started, we've long cared about all of these issues, but we really doubled down our investment and focus, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago. And a leading pillar within that was a commitment to being more transparent. And so that can take a lot of forms. It can be transparent about performance. It can be transparent about like the effectiveness of our responsibility solutions. But really, as I think about transparency in this new area, it's really about giving marketers the placement level details that they've been looking for and haven't really been able to get at scale, and hoping that we can move the industry to shift more in that direction. And then of course, just making sure that all of our measurement solutions are adequately able to evaluate CTV inventory as they would be able to evaluate desktop and mobile. So yeah, I think those are, as I think about responsibility, two pretty important areas. But we're really excited about the levers that we have in place across both YouTube TV and YouTube as viewed on TV screens, and we intend to offer a pretty robust, consistent set of tools in addition to the high bar that we already hold all video content to when it comes to whether it can monetize or not.
And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We have to get to the place where we just know where every ad is running, right? Down to the placement level, show level. The fact that we don't have that is, I think, concerning. You know, we've been working on this. It's better, right? Like some of the CTV partners we work with, there's some level of show transparency, but it is absolutely not 100% or comprehensive across all our partners. And I think it's fair for us as advocates of our clients to insist upon that. And clients should know where their brands are appearing. You know, it's such a basic thing that we're talking about. And, you know, the tech exists. I know some of the partners say, well, you know, our deal with so-and-so won't, you know, we're not allowed to tell you down to the show level detail. Like, that's really not acceptable anymore.
Yep.
Got to change.
Our final topic. You know, first of all, I want to call out Video News's efforts around making sure that the topic of DE&I was woven into this 2 days of conversations. It is tied to brand safety and suitability for sure. And I know all of your organizations have been very active in trying to address the challenges in the industry. At Pixability, we have, you know, one area that we have focused on is really making it easy for brands and very cost effective, if not free, to support creators of diverse backgrounds that have quality content. We've made that super easy for brands to take advantage of. I'd love to hear from all of you in terms of what do you think are the biggest challenges still, and actually really give it an opportunity to highlight some of the things your organizations are doing in this area. And Susan, I know you've personally been involved at Group M, so maybe I'll have you lead off.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the key pillars of our responsible investment framework. We are very much leaning into how can we support, especially Black-owned creators across many platforms. We originally and are still trying to do more with companies that are Black-owned. But the reality is, like, there's so many creators that are on the platforms, and that's very important for us to lean into as well. And, you know, some of the, and our teams are looking at the creators, the channels, the content in a much more consistent and meaningful way. And we have seen the rise in media investment for sure. I think there's still work to be done. I think, something that we actually did closely with YouTube, with Google, was to look at keyword blocking lists, right? Because what was happening last year was, when the protests happened after, the murder of George Floyd, there were many different clients who basically wanted to just avoid anything, all keywords that had to do with anything that they considered political, controversial, violence. So what was happening was teams and clients were blocking entire categories of words like Black Lives Matter, racism, even words like gay, right? That hurts journalism, that hurts many of the content creators, right? So we did a sweeping evaluation and have done a wholesale change. Clients still have the right to block whatever they want, of course, but it was a much more deliberate and considered view of what we should be blocking and what we should be letting in.
Joshua, anything to add?
I mean, some good comments. I mean, we've, like everyone, we've made organizational commitments. We've held equity upfront. So I think one of your comments, David, particularly resonates with me. Is I'm particularly concerned about supporting the creator economy. The creator economy represents, a group of individuals outside traditional mainstream media. I don't want them to be marginalized or separated out as we, embrace brand safety initiatives. I think the other thing that, again, where I give credit to Pixability is, as we look for these diverse and equitable investments, a lot of these companies struggle with the underlying tech that's needed to offer the brand safety solutions that we need. So as an industry, we've got to lean in and support them. It's great to say we want to commit to spend, but we've also got to sort of help them, pull them up and give them the other tools they need to be successful.
Absolutely. Danny, I know you guys created funds and really tried to support different communities. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, we've done a lot. I mean, to Joshua's point, the creator economy, we initiated one of the most sort of like revolutionary ways of developing creators that has since scaled. And so obviously, creators are the lifeblood of YouTube. We, of course, have our broad monetization program. Within that program, we only monetize trusted creators, but there's lots of other ways in which we are supporting diverse communities in particular, whether it's through our Black Voices Fund, which is sort of this global multi-year commitment to really supporting and fostering Black creators and artists on our platform. We are also just beginning to invest in what we're calling self-ID, which is giving creators the option to actually disclose their identity to us, which is really important because, one, we're going to treat that incredibly personally. It is inherently personal, and we have a responsibility to protect that information, but it does give us more of a sense of the makeup of our platform. But we will never use that information for the purposes of ads targeting or product promotions or anything like that. And so really today, we have a lot of investments we're making as a platform. As a marketer, the best way to really action and ensure that you're not unintentionally excluding audiences or diverse content is really to do exactly what Susan described, which is to look at the exclusions that you're using today. And make sure that, like, if that list was made public, like, you could stand behind it and feel proud of that list. And there were times when maybe items on that list were necessary for the purposes of safety, but they really no longer are. We've done a ton of research around it. And next year we'll be putting even more boots on the ground to help our customers and our agency partners do these types of audits, and kind of take some of that burden off of their shoulders. So that's the most actionable thing I think marketers can do today. But of course is one of many areas of investment across YouTube and Google more broadly.
Fantastic. Sadly, we are out of time in our discussion. I hope everybody that tuned in was able to take something away from this and found it insightful. I want to thank Susan, Joshua, and Danny for a great conversation, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the panels and sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.